Today, we will be discussing both some of the new features in development, how that's going. I'll be showing off the building system on the surface of Mars, and then we'll be going into some questions and AMA, which people had sent over on our Discord server. And then after that, I'll hang around for a while and answer anyone's questions they have in chat, anything I can't answer, or as I haven't introduced them. I'm Nick, the game development director, and I guess let's get into it. Let me show you what we have been working on so far. So currently what I'm going to be showing you is the building system. So it'll take a while to get into it. As I explained in the previous AMA and in some of our documentation, our building system is mostly inspired off of games like Ark and Rust and Conan Exiles, Valheim, that kind of system. So players have a blueprint that this window you see here, and you place foundational elements and then upgrade them into higher tier pieces. So in the beginning here, we're placing scaffolding, which is like the first tier, I guess. It's like a tier 0. And scaffolding is super cheap to place. It's very easy. You could almost consider it like scaffolding is your blueprint. It costs you basically nothing to place. It's easy to destroy it, rebuild it, however you want. And the idea is that it's quite easy here to block out a building shape that you would like, kind of block out your base, etc. However, scaffolding, as you can see, it's not airtight. Like there's lots of open gaps in it. It provides no protection against the elements. It provides you can't hold an atmosphere inside of a building made only of scaffolding, etc. So once you get here, I'm kind of blocking out a base building shape. And then once you have your building blocked out, then you go upgrading the scaffolding into tier 2 and 3 and 4 and so on building pieces. And as you get up higher in tiers, they begin offering weather protection. They start being able to hold atmospheres within them so you can make the area inside breathable, etc. But let me actually go back to what's going on here. The reason we went with this kind of building system, and some of you may have noticed in the very beginning of Mars 4, when the project was first launched, we were discussing going with a building system which is much more like Subnautica, where you have complete pieces of like a room or a hallway or something like that, and you place the entire piece and then you jigsaw them together a bit. And in the end, we ended up shifting during development to this system because we wanted to give the players more freedom to build what you really want. Like here in this example, you can see I'm building a kind of a circular tower-esque thing, which eventually I'll be putting like a glass dome on top of, like typical Mars style habitat. But not everyone may want to do that. Some people may want to build, I don't know, like Greek temple-esque style buildings. Still, they need to be designed to be able to hold atmospheres and stuff like that. It has to be like well built and thought out. But we wanted to give you as much freedom in the building process to make something that's really your own. So that's why we ended up going with this system. At the foundation, as you can see, there's not a whole lot of structural pieces. And that's kind of our goal. We want to try and make as few pieces as possible that let you build as open-ended of a system as possible. Like you'll notice that we only have triangular and square foundations. Yet with that, here I'm making a building which is circular. I kind of blocked myself in there, if you noticed. So the idea is to try and do that. Keep it as simple as possible, easy to use, but allow the players a lot of creative freedom as much as possible. So, as you can see here, I noticed some problems with my design, so I broke apart some of the building that I had so far. But I said, as it's scaffolding, it's super cheap to do. Break it apart, put it back together again, build out the shape as you want with very little penalty to the player, and then after that, when you start upgrading it, that's when you start really investing resources into it. So just because the scaffolding and this layout is a very simple system, we're trying to keep it as few pieces as possible, that isn't necessarily limiting your creative potential, because the system for building the base in its entirety is like, sorry, let's step back. There's two systems of construction. You have structural construction, which is what we're doing here. We're building walls, we're building foundations, we're building pillars, we're building load-bearing columns, and we're actually building the structure of the building. Then, moving on from that, you have what we're calling props, which are other things you place within a building. So later on a bit, you'll see me place an oxygen purification system and a heater. And in those two situations, those use a different building system. They're the props thing. And in terms of props, that's where we're going to put all of the kind of stylistic content. So if you want to have paintings on a wall, if you want to have a sofa, if you want to have like your lighting fixtures, all of those things, carpets on the floor, anything you could imagine that's not structural will be in that props building system. The reason we separate it is because there's a lot of technical differentiations between the two. As I said, one of the biggest concerns is how do you deal with stuff like the weather, oxygen? How can we, like, if the motivation behind the game is to survive the elements on Mars, so we have to address that in some way, and that's what your structural building does. As you see now here, I'm starting to upgrade the scaffolding up to tier 1, and at tier 1 now it is airtight, it can support an atmosphere, assuming you build an enclosed area. So right now, despite having upgraded pieces of it, it's still not, like, if I put an oxygen generator inside it right now, it's not going to be able to hold an atmosphere. I need to fully enclose it. And even after it's fully enclosed, if you open a door or open a window, all the atmosphere that you've produced inside will rush out, which would be a huge waste of energy. So inherently, like, we build a simple, robust system that rewards people playing logically. Like, logically, you should have an airlock. You can build a room without an airlock, but every time you open the door, all the atmosphere is going to go flying out the window, which means your oxygen generators and stuff will need to be working extra hard and far more often, and you're going to be using up more power. More power means more resources burned, and it just creates this kind of negative cycle. So we want to reward good building design as much as possible. Here in this demo, everything is being built instantly, and I am hacking all the resources. You'll notice every now and then on the right side of my screen, a long list of icons appear. That's me hacking in my resources just for this building demo, so you guys can see it. We haven't sorted out the mining system and stuff like that. That's still, well, not sorted. We haven't got it working yet. That's still under production and will be in a future video. Right here, actually, you see me placing props. So this thing that looks like a toilet, that was a concepting mistake. In hindsight, we're going to redesign that, because after we've got it in game, we're like, oh, the oxygen generator looks exactly like a toilet. That stuff happens. But anyway, we placed an oxygen generator and a small heating element. Now, one thing you'll actually notice, I placed my camera badly. So here, this is your temperature. Now, right now, this demo land environment is on the equator. And as you notice in the bottom right there, it's fairly midday. So the outside temperature is 25 degrees Celsius near the equator. So it's a nice plot of land in that case, in that situation. However, your suit is also warming you even more. So because of that, that's why here the survival resource of temperature is full, because you're good on that. You also have stuff like your health, your suit's energy, and food and water. Food and water go down quite slowly. I'll be doing another DevBlog AMA on all the survival resources later on. I mean, there's too much stuff to discuss in a single video, but you can already see some of it's working. Also, oxygen there at the top is being drained. However, we haven't added the system to refill oxygen yet. So when this runs out, I'll die. But this is such is the hard life of the original pioneers on Mars. We figure stuff out one thing at a time, or they get things working one thing at a time. So this building you're seeing right now is quite barren in the sense of other decorations, just because, as I explained, the second stage of decorating your base will be the props. Now, something to keep in mind about the way building system will work. Here you're just seeing a single user interacting with upgrading. But we already have a system working where the process of upgrading the quality, or the tier, I guess, of a wall segment or a floor segment or whatever, is done in a cooperative manner. So it'll take a lot of resources to upgrade walls, floors, stuff like that, to be able to be airtight, to be able to weather more intense storms, hold out more radiation, hold in temperature better, etc. And this system will be where landowners can assign the ability to place down scaffolding, basically giving land rights, and they can limit it to only certain areas on the land, stuff like that, or if it's your own land, build wherever you want. And then anyone or a much larger group of people can mine resources, bring them to the construction site, and do the upgrading process. So, for example, let me hop over to another gameplay footage now. This is another one of the buildings that I made. This one is actually the first video that I was recording here, and you see I make a lot of mistakes. It's a really dumb design. Like, no technical problems, just I played my own game badly, and I'm kind of embarrassed about it. But anyway, what can you do? So the idea is that you could have a situation, if you wanted, where a landowner gives permission to one player or a select few players to actually lay out the colony using these scaffolding pieces. So one person goes and places all the scaffolding built pieces, blocks out all the buildings, the hallways, where the garages will be, where the power stations will be. Like, they build all of that in the scaffolding. And then all the players on the server could be bringing resources and upgrading those individual pieces into the higher tier building pieces to be able to hold atmosphere, temperature, et cetera, et cetera. I mentioned garages there, which is an interesting point to mention. So as I've discussed, vehicles will be a fairly big thing in Mars. A bit later on in the call, I'll show you some more vehicles that we have in production, which are awesome. But one of the problems is, because you have to survive the dust storms on Mars, we are promoting players to build structures to protect their assets. Because a well-designed building that's upgraded with strong materials will weather a storm far better than just a vehicle outside. So this also creates kind of an endless progression cycle where you build your small little colony, then you get a vehicle, like you mine the resources, you trade on the markets to either purchase a vehicle that's already made or produce your own, or maybe you get one or you rent one from another player who's already built one. And then, well, now you should build a garage for it, some way to protect it from the elements. And then you get more vehicles, you need bigger garages, and the bigger garages, you need more power, so you start operating your power systems. And this both gives the player a lot of interesting city planning problems, basically, to play out. But at the same time, it also rewards organized colonies, like having a organized colony that has a landowner and land managers who are actually putting thought into the design of the colony could have, for example, central power stations that are dealing with all of these structural things. You could pool resources together to build much larger garages that everyone gets to share in, and everyone pays a tax to help afford those commodities that everyone gains access to. So the idea is to try and give players and landowners as much freedom as possible to really simulate building a colony on Mars from the ground up. Some of you may have noticed that in the hotbar, this is really confusing. There. In the hotbar there, the bottom center of the screen, there's an icon of my face. So on the Discord, I already posted this joke, but that's the heater. But we hadn't made a heater yet, so I told David, the engineer who was making the heater system and the temperature system, just use some placeholder icon. And so he took an icon of my face, and my face is now the heater. The funny thing is the description text for the heater that I wrote was, can be placed in a hot bar and will help keep you warm in cold nights. So having my face can be placed in a hot bar and will keep you warm in cold nights is now the running meme among all the developers. So that was regrettable. But what can you do? Here is the oxygen producer, and there is the heater, my face, being placed. So I think that covers most of the building system, as I discussed it. We'll get to everyone who's posting questions in the Twitch, like, don't worry, keep posting them. Once I get finished showing all the features and then going over the questions that were written in the Discord, then I'll get to all the questions that people are writing in the Twitch chat. So I mentioned vehicles previously, and I want to show that. No, that's the wrong window. That's also wrong. Okay. So here we have, I don't think we've actually shown this. I really need to get these lefts and rights work. There, we have the heavy miner transport. I don't think we've shown this to you yet. We will be doing an article about it like we did with the click beetle. And the heavy miner transport is an interesting vehicle. So on Mars, you can be mining by hand, but will also be exosuits that help assist in mining. Because the reality is, due to the Martian surface, it's far harder to build typical mining systems like you have on Earth, just because it's such rugged terrain. It's a problem you have on Earth as well. Like, you may find a fantastic mine, but it's so out in the wilderness, so there's no roads, there's no infrastructure, nothing. It's very hard to get the mining tools to and from there, get the resources, everything. So what we'll be going with the direction of both, because it's realistic enough to make sense, and it's way more fun and way cooler in general, is we will be having the progression system for miners going from a standard dude with a hand tool, a hand drill, up to exosuits, and then even mini mining mechs, which is actually super catchy. I should remember that term. So, but now you have a problem. So you have a group of miners with these mining mechs, these utility mechs. How do you get them to the location? Because the advantage of having an exosuit is they're very mobile. You can move around a lot. You can get into places that a vehicle can't. The downside is they're not very energy efficient in terms of like trekking over long distances. That's where this vehicle comes in. In this vehicle, it's specifically designed to be able to house, to be able to transport multiple miners in exosuits and mechs to and from as near as a drivable vehicle could get to where they want to be doing the actual mining. And this shows a theme a bit in our vehicle design. You will have seen it between this vehicle and also the click beetle that we already posted about, where we want vehicles to be specialized, to be interesting, to have specific roles, because that can reinforce more player cooperation, and that's really our goal. So in this case, this is an example of, sure, you could play alone and just have a small little transport, you go out mining on your own, but then you can't wear a mech and also drive the transport, so you have to make compromises. Where if you get a group of people working together, someone could have this transport vehicle and could transport 5 or 6 miners in mechs to where they want to mine. You could have another player who has a large hauler vehicle to be able to collect all the ore, so the miners go spread out amongst the rocks and cliff faces, mine the materials, bring them back, fill up the hauler, and then you make your way back just in the 2 vehicles again. So you could travel very large distances and have a very agile mining operation. Once again, benefiting from that cooperation between players. So let's see if this works. I have another vehicle I want to show you guys. Yes, cool, that worked. So this is another vehicle that we're working on. We haven't actually named it yet, but it is a massive transport, basically. On the back of this, you'll be able to connect up trailers which can house resources, kind of similar to like a modern semi, or I mean, what the concept artist calls it is a land train of death. However, that the of death part I think is not really necessary, kind of superfluous. But our concept artist is batshit insane. Now you can notice this already by in game concepts, it's typical to include material references, and his material reference here is all materials are an F-14 Tomcat. That's one of the downsides of the concept artist who designed this, who sexually identifies as an F-14 Tomcat. And I can understand it. It's a very beautiful aircraft, but at times one can go too far. Once again, this vehicle you will also be seeing will be presented to the community and so forth, and will be playable in the game, hopefully soon. Now, I had... This vehicle is actually in production already, and okay, here. Aha. So here oh wait, the picture is way too big. You can't see anything really. Here you can actually see the vehicle that I just sent you, that I just showed the concept art for in initial production. There's still a long way to go, but this, along with all the other vehicles that I've showed so far, are already well on their way in 3D production. And probably in a future AMA, I'm not sure which, or a future dev blog AMA, I'm not sure which one exactly, will be going through all of the... I just realized, are you actually... I hope that you were able to see all these pictures that whole way through. I'm not sure if you were. I guess we'll find that out. Anyway, I'll post these pictures on the Discord later on, if you didn't. I will try and edit this just in case I was wrong, you didn't get to see stuff. Here was the previous concept that I was mentioning when making the jokes about the F-14 Tomcat. So, all these, in a future AMA, future dev blog AMA, I'll be showing you these vehicles working in the game. Not sure exactly how long that takes. This did depend on the 3D art production process. But in-game, we already have a lot of the vehicle systems working, like suspension physics and the ability to drive vehicles, the fuel usage, stuff like that. I showed you a few videos of it on the previous AMA, but it was in a very rough state then. And yeah. Ashore, I'm not nervous. I talk very fast when I'm excited. And that's actually more it. I'm excited. I have been, I sit in front of a computer with a whole bunch of other people, working, designing awesome stuff. And now is the, our first opportunity to show it, to show off all the cool stuff we've worked on. There's so much stuff to show that I get overexcited and I talk too fast. So, thanks, man. I'm glad you're liking what you're seeing so far. I'm very proud of it. I am very proud of it. So, I think that covers most of the development topics, at least the work we've been doing thus far. And now I will get to the questions that people have asked on development. So, the questions that were written up on Discord, and once if anyone has any questions, you can also write them in the Twitch comments right now, and I'll answer them once I'm done with all of these questions. But in future, you can also write the questions on our Discord ahead of time, just so I have it easily prepared here. So, on to the questions. The first question is, can you tell us a little bit more about the command and control panel in browser? So, the command and control panel will be one of the first interactions players will get with the blockchain and their NFTs, and it will include systems for interacting with your inventory. It will include the marketplace. It will include from the game's perspectives, that's the main one. Your inventory, your marketplace, character progression, some of that stuff. And this will also include other stuff that I'm less familiar with, like I believe in there we'll be adding in some staking or yield farming system. However, don't quote me on that. I'm not the one developing the control panel. However, from my perspective, from the game design perspective, the control panel's objective is to be able to get is to be able to allow the player to interact with the game's progression, even if they're not in the game. So you can be out walking around on your cell phone on the command and control panel, and you can be trading, you can be buying resources, you can be managing your land, doing those kinds of things. Basically, as much of the gameplay as possible that doesn't require, that you can do away from your, like, this main game experience. Question number 2, is it possible to exhaust the resources on a land or will they be renewed? No, resources on a land will be renewed. There will be a kind of a respawning, refreshing process. However, it will take time. So if you have more lands, you can mine one land barren, go to the next one, mine it barren, go to the next one, mine it barren, and then eventually continue that loop again. But they won't be exhausted, otherwise it just limits how much of the game the players can play, basically. Once the lands you own run out of resources, you can't build anymore, you can't do anything else. And we could quickly reach the point where there's just no resources left on Mars to build stuff. Question 3, how will resources be distributed on each land? So each land the resources will be distributed in a quasi-realistic manner, where we'll try to distribute resources roughly where they would realistically be found, such as at the bottom of craters, you're more likely to find ice. In rocks, you're more likely to find iron, etc. However, there will be also a lot of influence just on good game design and good game mechanics. For example, we'll want to spread out resources, have small clusters of valuable resources throughout your land to reward exploring your land and trying to find them. And also for balance purposes, we don't want anyone to buy a land and then end up that there is no resources on their land, or incredibly few. We want to make sure that all lands are valuable in some way. Now, they may have different resources. There will be, obviously, the example that I always give is that the lands at the poles will have a lot more ice than any other land will. So, but they will have a lot more ice, so that's a huge advantage. But at the same time, due to the temperature differences, there will be, you'll have a lot more of a challenge just surviving there. So the objective is to make each land balanced in its own way. What types of resources will there be in the game? The exact list isn't finalized yet, but so far we're taking inspiration just from the realistic resources you would find on Mars. You have aluminum, titanium, iron, carbon, clays, and the idea is to mix those in ways to achieve your objectives. So like mix in carbon and iron, you can get steels, stuff like that. However, as I said, the exact list hasn't been finished as it's not necessary at this point. Right now I'm building the systems to support the resources of the system for building, as you see here, and we're just running with placeholder resources for the moment. As exactly how many resources we have, what types of resources, how they interact with each other, those have massive implications on game balance and game economy. So that's something I really much prefer playtesting, not just, can't design that on paper. You have to design that by playing the game. Question 5, tell me more about the click beetle. In the video Newton Mars 360 VR trailer, we see a particular transport. Is it that, or is that something else? Tell us about its functions he can perform, what compartments does he have, etc. So, actually not etc, there's another line, sorry. I saw that on the left side there are large compartments, and on the right side you can see a small hatch and something like a purple lighting. I got the impression it's a compartment for growing. I also saw that it has 3 connectors on the top, and one is signed as energy. What are the other 2? Oxygen and water. So the click beetle, as we put out in our story, what's unique about it is it includes a MMRTG, which is a multi-mission radioactive something generator. I forget what the T stands for. Which is a system that NASA uses right now. It's the system that powers the Martian rover, and it's basically an incredibly compact nuclear reactor. So the uniqueness of the click beetle and where it gets its namesake is that it is, in a sense, a portable, very small power station, which can be super useful for new colonists just starting to build their bases on Mars. They can use the click beetle to power basic amenities until they get some larger, more static structures in place. And at the same time, it can give you freedom for building small mining camps, outposts, stuff like that, kind of temporary bases or powering temporary systems further away from your main base. The click beetle doesn't transport, it only fits a single person, and it doesn't have much cargo capacity. However, the fact that it is basically a mobile generator makes it fantastically useful for a lot of different situations. Even in the sense, even in the most simple sense, where let's say you have a colony with lots of players and you're building it out as you're going, expanding, well, you can build a new building but not have it hooked up to your power grid yet, or your power grid may not be ready to support that new building. The click beetle can act as band-aids for those kinds of situations, in addition to its ability to support building small outposts and stuff like that. And the reason it got the name click beetle is for that sake, because it has a little generator. Every spacesuit is equipped with a radiation detector. What's it called? Oh, I just blanked out on the name. What are they called? Geiger counter. Yeah, every spacesuit has a built-in Geiger counter, and that's one of the downsides of the click beetle. If you're driving it, you're perfectly safe from its radiation because there's a lot of mass in between the generator, which is in a cylinder hanging off the back, and the rest of the vehicle in the driver's seat. But if you get out and walk around behind it and get near the generator, you will start experiencing some pretty high radiation, and we don't recommend you hang out around the back of a click beetle for very long. When will it be possible to buy a click beetle? Because I already think it will be enough to buy one click beetle for every 5 sites, and how many of these vehicles will be produced in total? So I don't have a direct answer to those questions. That falls more under the blockchain development team and the command and control panel. In terms of will they be limited in number, we've discussed how to go about it. We would like to have some sort of limiting factor. However, we may do it in a series of limited runs or something along those lines. However, all of this is very subject to change. This is just my personal impressions of that situation. You'll need to wait for some more official news on that. For each land, you can have an inventory of only 3 colonists for free. For free, who pays for the 4th? So that's actually a bit of a misunderstanding. A player can have up to 3 colonists for free. That was something we discussed previously. It's still very much up in the air of exactly how we sort that out, but what was discussed previously is that a player can have up to 3 colonists for free. So you think about a crypto wallet can have up to 3 colonists for free. If they want more, the owner of that wallet can buy more colonist slots. However, it's not linked to a land. A player could have purchased 100 different colonists and not own a land, and use those colonists to do jobs on other people's lands, etc. Or someone could own one land and also be a player. Like the ownership of a land and the ownership of a colonist are separate NFTs. One does not directly relate to the other. Technically. Officially, we'll probably be doing some kind of rewards for landowners, so we'll be giving them some free stuff that if you don't own a land, you'd have to buy. So in that situation, we may give more rewards because you own a land, but technically a colonist is an NFT and a land is an NFT. Both of them are unrelated to each other. You can play the game without owning any lands, and you can own a whole bunch of lands and never play the game. Like they're not mutually exclusive. So tell me more about how the game will start. Will we start on a spaceship in space, or will you immediately appear on Mars? The game will begin with the landing of your shuttle onto Mars. If you own a land plot, then your shuttle will be arriving to one of the land plots you own. If you don't, then it would be arriving to a series of options. Either there'll be some kind of public land plots that you can land in. There'll be some players who own land plots but have it open to anyone to join, so there's no restrictions to basically taking residence there. Like, say, here's my land plot, anyone can take up residence here, land if you want, build whatever you want, totally free. Or you could arrive there and directly start doing jobs for players. So you could arrive and instantly take a job from the jobs board. So the initial experience will depend a bit on whether you own land or you don't, and what you want to do initially. If you own a land, your first experience will be arriving on your land. It'll be barren, and you will need to start mining resources, start building habitats for yourself, start setting up oxygen production, food production, water purification, resource processing, mining operations, etc. So you'll go slowly building your colony. If you're joining the game without owning a land, then there could be lots of initial experiences that are all pretty different and varied, really depending on kind of how you want to start. Will it be possible to restart the game in the single player stage? We will be pioneers and yes. So you will be able to restart the game in the single player stage. It's basically just like any other single player survival game. You'll be able to play as long as you want, start a new game, do whatever you want. There'll be no limitations in that sense. So you'll be able to fully explore the game in whatever way you want to during the single player stage. At what stage do we need Mars4 dollars? So that will come after the single player stage. We'll have it working in multiplayer, and that like a cooperative style multiplayer. And at that stage, you won't directly need Mars4 dollars because we still won't be doing trading between colonists of resources and stuff like that. However, at that stage, we're hoping to get vehicle ownership in. So even at that stage, though there isn't Mars4 dollars in the game, if you purchase something like the Click Beetle, you'll be able to use it in the game. So you'll need Mars4 dollars to purchase Click Beetles and stuff like that. Leveling the colonists through the command and control panel. Tell us about it, or is there another way to level? So the current plan, and this is still in the planning phase, the character progression. So, but the current plan is that characters will progress through time, and that's not time in game, so real world time. And with that progression, it'll be about selecting abilities and skills to train and stuff like that. Very similar to EVE Online's progression system, if anyone has played that. And that's what you would do in the command and control panel. You would be able to check up on your colonists, start giving them skills, telling them what you want them to be training, etc. And that just happens, whether you're playing the game or not. We've separated those two things because we don't want to punish people who don't have as much time to play. And also we don't want to punish people who are more interested in the grander strategy of the marketplace and trading and buying lands and profiting from the game. That does also introduce an interesting, I guess, element to the economy of the colonists. The first people to buy colonists and start training them will be the highest level colonists in the game. Now, that's not going to make them overpowered necessarily, but that does, like, basically the moment you buy a colonist, their value starts increasing. And as they gain more levels, as they gain more skills, as they can do more things. And you can sell them just like any other NFT. So I foresee there will be a market for the, I guess, first generation colonists, because they, as everyone progresses equally over time, the earlier a colonist is bought, naturally the higher level it will be. So question number 13, cities will develop above ground or underground too, maybe in the rock. So cities primarily will be above ground. As you see in this video, most of the construction is done above ground. However, we are exploring the idea of introducing caves or allowing people to build underground bases and so forth. However, it's a complicated topic, because if you think Mars4 is a survival game about surviving the elements. If you can build underground or in a cave, the elements aren't as big of a problem. Like a sandstorm isn't going to hit a cave. Strong radiation or a solar flare won't affect a cave. temperature rising and decreasing. Like out on the surface of Mars, temperatures can swing dramatically, but inside of a cave, the cave's walls and stuff will help balance out those swinging, those temperature swings. So it removes a lot of the challenges of the survival game. And so because of that, I'm very cautious about introducing any of those kinds of features, and they definitely won't be in the first versions of the game, because they need a lot of playtesting to make sure they don't undermine the fundamental PvE survival gameplay. Will it be possible to change the rules of the land governance system? For example, changing from democratic free market to a private plot? Yes, you'll be able to change them at any point in time. How exactly it will affect the players on the land hasn't exactly been decided, because there's some edge cases to consider. So what if you, like for example, what if you revoke a player's citizenship to your land? What does that exactly mean? Like instantly kicking them off your land would be a dick move, if we're being honest. Like they may have inventory on your land, they may have built a building on your land that has valuables inside of it, so there needs to be some way that that player can move out, basically. So there will be some system, some restrictions, something there to make sure it's fair for all parties, but in essence, landowners can change the rules of their land and change anything about it at will. However, that also would probably be something that could stand against the landowner. For example, if you're going to be settling on a land, on someone else's land, it may be public information how many people that landowner has evicted from their land. Because you may not want to settle on a land if you see that the landowner like randomly kicks people out all the time because they feel like it. So I think there's a lot of things to consider with in terms of changing the citizenship rights to your land. Changing from a free market to a more closed market, that's a lot simpler. But yes, to answer the question, yes, you can change stuff at will. The next question, in this example, what would happen to the foreigners that already were on your land and investing on that land in the first place? So as I just discussed in the previous question, that's a complicated topic that we are still trying to work out exactly how to deal with it, because obviously it must be dealt with. We have to have some system that's fair for everyone. A landowner needs to have control of their land and be able to change the rules of their land, but at the same time, we can't allow that to be abused or to unfairly harm a resident of a land. How will the game handle the high volatility of the Mars4 dollar? For example, what will happen in-game to prices if the Mars4 dollar is appreciated or depreciated by 20% in a single day? So the system for this hasn't been decided upon exactly. I think that personally, that's something that I would prefer leave up to the free market as much as possible. As I said, the majority of the market in the game, most of the things that you're buying from other players. You're not buying it from us. We'll obviously be selling some things, like the original NFTs and the first versions of vehicle blueprints and stuff like that. But the goal is to get as much of the trade and purchasing happening between players. Because at the end of the day, it is a pay-to-earn game. The whole point is that everyone can be selling things and profiting. So that part will be affected by the free market. In terms of the items that we're selling, I'm not sure how we're going to deal with that yet. That's part of the reason why we haven't put up the vehicles and stuff like that to be sold yet, because there's still these critical issues that we need to come up with good solutions for. Okay, that covers all of the questions from before the stream started. So now let's see what people have asked in the chat. Looking pretty cool, thank you. What size will the game be? I'm assuming you're asking like download size of the client. That is very hard to answer at this point in time. Right now, what I'm playing here is I think like 350 megabytes. But as we start adding in more vehicles, more building pieces, like there's a lot more content to be added in, and the download size will increase. However, we're also looking to try and figure out how we can stream as much of that content as possible so that you don't need to download everything right away. Like, for example, you shouldn't need to download the surface of every single map on Mars. because you'll only be playing on one map at a time, and when you move to the next map, well, at that point in time, you can download that map surface. So we're working on a lot of stuff like that to try and optimize that process as much as possible. So awesome reminds me of Fortnite. Yeah, the building system, it's the same building system that was also used in Fortnite. It's a very tried and true system. What's kind of funny is that the games that have used it, Ark, Valheim, Fortnite, Rust, are all like Game of the Year, top selling games for the year they were launched levels of things, and still to this day ridiculously popular. I'm not saying it's because of the building system, but the building system it's a great system. Anyone who's played that game will know how simple yet liberating this system is. You can do so much with it. It's just crazy. So someone asked, can you fight and can you kill? No, this is a player versus environment game. There is no inter-player combat. We may in the future introduce stuff like arenas and stuff like that. However, the game itself, the fundamental game, is player versus environment. The players are working together to survive the Martian environment. They are not trying to combat each other. We actually have quite a beautiful story that's just on this topic that will be coming out soon. Amazing game. Hyped AF. Thank you. I'm glad you guys have liked it so much. Wow, a lot of detail. Yep, it's coming together really well. I'm very proud of how it's all looking. Now, a lot of the stuff you're seeing here is still fairly placeholder. Case in point, the icon of my face. Remember how I was mentioning how the oxygen generator really looks like a toilet? Look at the icon of the oxygen generator right in the bottom middle of the screen next to my face. Tell me that doesn't look exactly like a sci-fi toilet. So we'll fix that. Don't worry, it's just placeholder. Will there be modules for people that don't care that much about building and want to focus on the other aspects of the game? No. However, the nice thing about the building system is that it is really simple. In these videos that I'm showing, I'm trying to get kind of creative and complex with it, but to build a simple box takes 45 seconds. Like it's very easy. Throw down 4 or 6 foundations, throw down the walls, throw down the ceiling, done. Like it's so easy that if someone isn't interested in building a cool, unique base, they don't need to worry about it. Also, there's the other thing, like, because of the job system, even if you don't want to build your base, the idea with the job system is that we'd be able to make it robust enough. You could hire someone else who is actually good at making cool bases to build your base. And the nice thing about this system, where you have like the scaffolding that you upgrade, you don't need to give them the resources to do it or anything. Like, the scaffolding is ridiculously cheap. They could go and block you out a whole base, and you just go around and upgrade everything with your own resources. You never need to like give them all the resources to do it and like deal with all of that risk of them stealing it. Blah, blah, blah. That's just not a problem. Looks like Rust, but way better. I love it. Thank you. And yeah, as I mentioned, Rust is another one of the games who's used this same method of building system. It's a great system. I really like. That's why we pivoted to it away from the Subnautica style system, because you have so much freedom with this kind of system. It's just a lot more fun. So someone is mentioning here about how they want PvP, and so player versus player combat, and the reason why we decided not to go with that is because, remember, at the end of the day, this is a pay-to-earn game, and we're playing with real money here. And anyone who has played Rust or Ark or Fortnite or whatever, it's so... Even in those situations, it's very frustrated for someone to say, hide right outside the door of your base. And when you open your door, go for a walk, go mining, they instantly shoot you in the back of the head and run into your base before you got a chance to lock the door. And then they steal everything. That's really, really annoying in a game like Rust, where you don't actually lose anything. You're not losing money. You lost some stuff and some time. Imagine that same thing happening, and they run inside and steal $500, $1,000 worth of resources or items or who knows what. Like, that's not the kind of game we want to make. The fact that we are a pay-to-earn game, the fact that we're already including money in this, that the players can go mine ore and then sell it and make a real profit, already will introduce a lot of people trying to abuse the system for profit. So adding in the ability for players to kill each other, for players to rob each other, for players to destroy each other's houses and raid them, I think that would just ruin the it would ruin the potential of the game, because no one, as soon as one person gets robbed like that, they're just going to be done. They'll not be interested anymore, and it'll just destroy the player base, and the game won't be able to grow. That's why we went with this player versus environment model. There is challenges. You are fighting against the environment. You are trying to survive, and it is a challenge, but it's a cooperative challenge where you work together with people, or you just work alone to do it. But you're not working against other players, because that just opens up an endless river of griefing. Can you collect all the concept art and sell an art book? I would love to do that. I think that all the art that you guys haven't even seen all the art. You guys have seen like a quarter of it. But yeah, I would love to make an art book for this. It's so gorgeous. I'm really impressed and proud of what our concept team has done. It's just awesome. Like, looking back at this, like, it's so cool. So cool. Like, who could have thought you could make just like a simple semi or a simple like transporter look that awesome? But so yeah, I can't guarantee it, but I personally will definitely be pushing for us to make some sort of art book and maybe sell the artwork as NFTs as well. I'm not sure. Someone asked that in the last AMA, and it's not a bad idea, because I mean, I would buy this. Hopefully they'll allow me to if we do. Is it possible to build large infrastructure like highways across our lands? Yes, it is. That's actually, so this vehicle would kind of require that. It's so large, it can drive across the flat areas on Mars. However, it's not to be able to even like drive over cliffs and valleys and all that stuff, obviously. So that's going to be one of the one of the ways to invest in your land is to be building not only just highways, but also bridges across valleys and other infrastructure to allow people to transport goods through your land more efficiently. Because as I've mentioned this a few times in the previous AMA as well, but one of the ways that we want landowners to be profiting is whenever someone trades on Mars, they'll be using a global market. And when you, just like in the real world, you can buy oil in Russia, but that doesn't mean the oil instantly appears in London. If you want the oil to be in London, you need to first buy it from Russia at that price, and then you need to transport it somehow. And what we want to do is that transportation is a fee that you pay to the market, and then the market will draw a path, the most efficient path between where the product is and where you are, or where the product is and where you want to transport it to, and then every land that it crosses in that path will get a portion of that market fee. So that's a way that lands will be generating revenue in the game, in addition to the other systems for lands generate revenue. So with that, the way that we calculate that best route, obviously there's like direct line, but then there's also infrastructure. So if your land has bridges and roads and stuff like that built across it, it means crossing your land will be much faster. And what may end up happening is, although someone could take a straight line, the straight line isn't actually the most developed route. So the path may go around it, going through the lands that have far better developed transportation infrastructure. So that's kind of the financial benefit to building roads and highways and bridges and all that stuff, to make it someone be able to cross your land as easily and fast as possible. So someone asked, is a storm always coming? No. This isn't actually a full storm. As you saw in my previous AMA, I showed a full-on sandstorm. This is just the high wind event. that you're seeing now. And no, there's not always storms. However, storms are a fairly big element to the player versus environment gameplay, because like surviving those storms is not going to be easy, and that's the reasoning for needing to build sturdy bases and upgrade them to be able to survive the weather and so forth. Will it be possible to decorate our bases with your own uploaded designs? Exactly how? Not sure yet, but that is a goal of ours. We already have the system for vehicles. For vehicles, what they'll be doing is we'll have a vehicle itself. So there's, one second, let me show you. Yeah. So here's the click beetle. Now, do you see all the areas of it that are tan? Those areas will be able to be retextured with different patterns and so forth. And those patterns are just a very simple, just image. So people, players, whatever, could paint their own style of how they would want this vehicle to be painted and then sell it on the market as an NFT, and other people can buy that paint scheme and apply it to their vehicles. And that will be an incredibly simple process. How we do it for buildings, I'm not sure exactly how we'll do that yet. We do want to obviously allow as much player customization as possible. We have been considering, when I discussed the prop system earlier on, that because players will be able to buy lamps and sofas and stuff like that to place, to also allow players to create and then upload and sell as NFTs these lamps and sofas and rugs and paintings and stuff like that. Will there be a development kit for artists to upload and sell their own models? Yes, there will. As I described before, uploading paint schemes for vehicles is ridiculously easy. What we do allow artists to create and upload and don't, not sure yet. For example, I think it's going to be very unlikely that artists are allowed to create their own vehicles because the vehicles are ridiculously complicated, and we need to vet everything that's posted, and we have like a 30-page document on how vehicles need to be designed, how it needs to be not only just modeled, but how the UVs need to be laid out on it, how it needs to be textured, how it needs to be physically modeled, the topology of it, how the suspension systems need to work, how it needs to be rigged to be able to have functioning physics. Like, there's so many requirements that I fear we would, we even have to spend a lot of time reviewing vehicles that are produced by professional game vehicle 3D artists. That opening that up to the community, I don't think is really feasible. However, everything that we can easily open up, like as I mentioned before, sofas, rugs, lights, and all that stuff, that's way easier because there's no gameplay mechanics to it. So yes, we will be allowing them to upload and sell their own models. There will be some restrictions on it, but yeah, we'll try and have as few restrictions as possible. Will we be able to? Will we be allowed to form tribes or alliances to share resources with multiple colonists? Yes, depending on how exactly you mean. Within a land, that's kind of default functionality within the land management system, because you can have a land treasury, and then you can assign like this group of colonists all can share access to this treasury. And you could have multiple, so you could have multiple treasury inventories and multiple groups of colonists that can share in those different treasury levels. So you could have like the base treasury, which is anyone who lives on the land can access it, and you have basic building materials and stuff like that. Then you could have like the extremely high level, very rare resources, which only like specific citizens who the landowner really trusts can access that inventory, and that inventory they divvy out as they see fit. Can you change the token name to Mars World, MW? I don't think so. I personally cannot. I don't know who would be the one to do that, but I doubt that. I doubt rebranding at this point is the best idea. Will we be allowed to, oh no, that one I already answered. Nick, what will be happening with the rare NFT lands? Any threads or ideas? So we are still in the process of designing and preparing the super rares and rare lands. We want to do something really unique with them, and we don't want to announce it too early. Because the problem is, once you say something, you have to stick to it, and we want to kind of see how cool of something we can do. And that requires a lot of research and development and testing to see what we can really do with them that's awesome and unique. So that's the only question that I can't answer right now. So after, I don't know how long we've been going for, an hour and something, and my other 3-hour AMA, that's the first question I can't really answer yet. What's the approximate price of the rare lands? I don't know. That's now I can't answer. I physically don't know. That's being dealt with by a different team. As I said, I am game development. Pricing models and stuff like that is outside of my purview. So your guess is as good as mine on that one. So I think. Oh wait, no, there was. Okay, I think that's the end of the questions. But I remember someone on Discord asked me a question. There was a really good one, and I think I should discuss it again. So there was an interesting question that someone asked on Discord, which I want to repeat here. They didn't ask it for this AMA, and I already answered it there. If you go to the Mars4 Discord, I'm basically always there lurking. Just don't ping me too much because, I still have to make the game. But someone said, shouldn't some lands stay public for roads built connecting critical infrastructure? If all land is private, if all land is privately owned, couldn't people restrict travel to non-land to people who don't own those lands, and that could get very messy? Or they could try and abuse it by blocking people off and forcing them to pay additional tolls and stuff like that. That's a great question, and there's two ways in game design in general. When you have something like that, we don't want that. There's two ways you can go about it. You can either try and ban players from doing it, you can outright make it impossible to do, or you can make it so it's not beneficial. And this is always the way I want to go. So remember when I discussed previously about how trade would work, how trade would be based on that when you buy something on the market and you want to transport it to yourself, we'll draw a line on the lands, across where the resources are and where you want to receive them. And in that line, all lands that go across it will get a percentage of the transportation fee. If you make your land completely private so no one can enter it, then your land will always be gone around in the transportation. So you stop making profit from the transport from the market. Same thing, if you try and put additional tolls on your land so normal people can't even cross it for free, well, then those tolls will be taken into account when drawing that map, and they'll probably avoid it because it's that pathing algorithm will be trying to pay as little for the transport as possible. So naturally, if you put any restrictions on your land for the flow of people, you will be losing out in profits from the market's trade. There's also another question that someone asked on the Discord, which is, will items transported on the market be physical items? Will you actually, if you buy something on the market and pay for it to be transported by the market itself, will you see it driving across the lands? The answer is no there, because that could introduce a lot of areas for players to abuse the system. So, for example, you could get the truck stuck. There's a transport truck carrying resources, you can park all your cars around it and blockade it and get it stuck there. And because it's not a player, they can't just drive around. We'd have to then build self-driving car algorithms, which is just not worth it. So that stuff will happen on the server without actually ever being rendered in the game world. The landowners will just get the profit from those trades without ever seeing the vehicle cross their lands. So someone asked in the Twitch again, in case anyone has missed it, when is the release of the single-player game? It is for Q3 of this year. However, development's going really well. I think it's possible that we may have something sooner. Excuse me. Or what I may be looking at doing, I haven't discussed this with anyone else yet, but we may be looking at maybe trying to get a version of what you're seeing right now to the people to play, just the base building, because honestly, it's really fun. And even just simple, like here, where I'm pressing a button to generate infinite resources and just building a cool base, it's a lot of fun. So I think we may look at trying to get something out even earlier than that. But the official schedule that is live is the single player game will be ready in Q3 of this year. So what about the Mars4 token? Is it more like SLP in Axie, or is it more like AXS? I don't remember. I haven't played much Axie. I haven't played much of any game recently, if we're being totally honest. I believe one of those is the in-game currency, and the other one is the voting currency, right? In that case, if I did understand that correctly, then the Mars4 dollar would be more like the in-game currency. You'll be using the Mars4 dollar on the store, on the marketplace, I mean. So if you buy or sell any resources within the game, if you want to buy 10 kilograms of iron from someone, you will do so using the Mars4 currency, the Mars4 dollar. That is one of the primary use cases for the coin, is that it will be the currency within the game, similar to like gold in World of Warcraft or something. I don't know if there are plans to introduce the voting type currency into the Mars4 project. As I said, I am purely on game development side. I basically know as much of the crypto plans as I need to right now, but I have more than enough tasks on game design and development before I even start worrying about those kinds of things. I'll be diving more into that once we get the single player version out to the public and we start getting some feedback on the game design. Okay, so someone brought up a good point. On the transactions on servers, wouldn't that negate, referring to transporting goods via the market automatically, wouldn't that negate the job of transportation drivers? It sets a maximum price for a transportation driver, because the idea is that transporting via the market automatically will be fairly expensive, and that gives the opportunity for people who want to be transportation drivers to undercut the market, basically. So you can pay the market to transport it automatically, but it will be quite expensive, and it'll be cheaper to pay a player to do it. Also, it'll probably be faster to pay a player to do it, but we need we need an automated system, because otherwise we could have the situation where there are no drivers, or not enough drivers, or not enough players playing at a specific time for someone to get the goods from the market that they purchased. And that would undermine the viability of the market. So we need some kind of catch-all system to make sure that someone can always use the market, and the market will always be valuable in any situation. However, the idea is to add a lot of downsides to using the automated trade that promotes players more to do the driving themselves and to do those jobs themselves. However, some people will always go for the convenience of the market over putting out a job. If you put out a job for someone to do it, it will get done cheaper, but it may take them longer to accept the job offer, et cetera, et cetera. So the idea is that player drivers and the trade on the market will exist in parallel, with each one having advantages and disadvantages. And player drivers will never be able to charge an infinite sum of money for transporting goods, because there's the ceiling of what the market will charge. So you don't have that problem where maybe there's only 10 drivers online, and if you want to transport anything, it has to be done by them, so they can set any price they want, which would just result in the market not being usable. This was a complex design decision, as you can see, because it's a question of, like, if you think about real world terminology, we're reducing the profitability of one potential job, but doing so in favor of all the other jobs. If you think about someone who's a miner, would be negatively affected dramatically if people couldn't buy their goods easily. So if drivers would go on strike, for example, or not necessarily on strike, but be charging ridiculous sums of money to transport stuff, that would also screw over the miners. It would screw over the people who produce things like vehicles or decorations for building, etc. So they would hold the key to the entire economy on Mars. And I think that's very risky. So that's why we have the automated system. But the idea is the automated system isn't the ideal. The ideal would be hiring drivers. But automated system is like that backup, that maximum price, basically, that someone could charge you to transport. So someone else asked, if one would like to explore the planet with a vehicle, as long as you have fuel, could you go anywhere? Yes, you could go anywhere, but fuel isn't your only requirement. You'll also have to weather the storms. For example, like eventually vehicles will get damaged and need repairs, especially if you're going through like really intense dust storms or lightning storms, or dust lightning storms, which are awesome. Google it, it's super cool. And you also have oxygen and food and water. But these are all things you theoretically should be able to buy along your journey. So assuming that your circumnavigation of Mars, let's say, goes through lots of other colonies and you stop over to buy things you need along your way, yes, there's no reason you couldn't do it. Take a long time though. But yeah, there's no technical limitation there. One thing just to clarify, as I've mentioned before though, there's a loading screen between each land plots. So you would cross a land plot, and then when you get to the border to the next one, you would load out of that one and load into the next one. I know everyone wants like a seamless experience, and a lot of people are promising seamless experiences, but having no loading screens and a completely seamless connection between an entire planet is so much additional development effort that it's never really been done successfully, especially on the surface of a planet. And it seemed like a needless feature just for marketing purposes. And that's not what we're here for. We're not here for like building pointless hype. We're trying to make a genuinely fun game, and we're trying to actually get it done in a reasonable amount of time so people can play it. So that was one of the compromises we had to make. Will vehicle be limited with heights, cliffs? Okay, yeah. So yes, that would be true. So there is still geographical limitations. Like you can't drive straight up a cliff face. So you will need to, there is some skill and experimentation in navigating the surface of Mars. It will also depend what vehicle you have. For example, this vehicle is quite a bit more the Cliff Beetle is quite a bit more all-terrain than, say, than this transport vehicle. This transport, although it's really large, it does have a wide wheelbase, it has huge wheels. It doesn't have the same flexibility. So your ability to circumnavigate the lands will depend a lot on what vehicle you choose, and there'll be vehicles specialized for that total all-terrain nature. Exactly. So someone else mentioned, so the market is premium and time consuming that drivers can leverage. Yeah, there will be downsides to that market system for the drivers to leverage. It just creates basically a cap. Drivers can never strangle the entire economy of all of Mars, but there's plenty of room for them to leverage and offer a better product. Someone else asked a really good question. When players are driving, the land traversing transactions cost to be paid. Are they paid by the driver, or are they automatically incorporated into the rate logic between the negotiation between the driver and buyer? It would be part of that negotiation. So if you're hiring someone for a driver contract, the contract will include where you're starting from and where you're ending. And we will use the same algorithm from the market of all the landowners in between who need to be paid. And that will just be included in the default price. And that would, just depending how you look at it, the buyer's paying for it or the driver's paying for it out of his cut. But it's when the deal is agreed upon, those funds are part of the deal. So basically it's impossible for a driver to transport goods and then lose money. Like, it's part of the deal. Like, they can transport goods for free, in which case the buyer would only pay the transportation cost. Hopefully there's collaborative resource sharing to build infrastructure like Death Stranded. Yes, there is. I explained this a bit earlier on in the video, but the lands, depending on how a land is managed, you can have treasuries of resources that different players have access to. And this could be done freely, like there's a communal pot of resources, or you could do something where there is a tax that all citizens pay, and then the land management assigns engineers and builders to build the infrastructure that that tax is supporting. So, for example, you could have a land that their unique selling point is that power is free. You don't need to worry about power, but there's an X tax on the land. X tax, everything you mine on that land, X percentage of it is taxed and goes to a communal pool, and then that communal pool is used to build and upgrade power systems and so forth that all the players on the land can use. That example is a bit more complicated because obviously you still need to get the power from the station to whatever you're doing. So, like, you couldn't build on the other corner of the land. You need to build near the power station, and like a colony city would evolve. That would require planning, but you get the idea. I picked an overly complicated example.